My name's Joanna Weil, and I'm a senior research associate with the Jail Reform Team at the Center for Court Innovation. The Jail Reform Team conducts research and designs policy relating to reducing the jail population in New York City. Anything that can shrink the jail population is fair game. On our team, we kind of look at a problem in a few different ways. So for example, with the bail reform law, we've taken it kind of in two pieces. We've done legal analyses of this and statistical analyses. So as soon as the bail reform law was passed in April of 2019, it went into effect in January 2020, but when it was passed in April 2019, members of our team completed a legal analysis on the reform. And this included an easy to read summary, as well as a bench card for judges and attorneys to use kind of as a quick reference as they're in the courtroom. And this has really been a widely used go-to source information for those in the New York criminal justice system. In fact, the summary document was downloaded over 140,000 times. It was cited by The Intercept, The New York Times, Gothamist, and The New Yorker. Second, we've begun crunching the numbers to understand the impact of bail reform. In the spring of 2021, we published a report called 1 Year Later, Bail Reform in New York City, which looked at the impact of the reforms on how bail was used both leading up to and after the reform was implemented. So I think kind of the big finding is, not surprisingly, the use of bail declined overall in 2020 once the reforms went into place. We also found that judges really took advantage of the opportunity of our newly expanded supervised release program, which provided the opportunity to supervise someone to ensure they turn up to court rather than just holding them in jail. One thing we saw in our analysis was that in the first quarter of 2020, so when bail reform was first rolled out, in these violent cases where judges still had their discretion, the disparity between Black and white defendants who faced bail was just 7 percentage points. But then, by the final quarter of 2020, we actually saw that the disparity had again widened to 21 percentage points. So this really highlights kind of a warning to some extent of what can happen when there's a lot of discretion. Now, not saying that discretion can't be important and useful. It allows us to consider other facts of the case we may not be otherwise thinking about. But where discretion is retained, there's more places for biases to kind of creep in. And we try to take together all this different research and analyses we've done and put them together in ways that can be used by stakeholders and policymakers. So that Year One Bail Reform report, we can take those numbers about racial disparities as discretion was used and use that to think more about how racial disparities can be reduced and we can stop them from growing. So looking at the impact of reforms like New York State bail reform is not a one-time look. We have to continue looking at how that law impacts people in the city 6 months out, a year out, 2 years out. And so in the coming year, in 2022, the Jail Reform Team is going to keep doing this in a number of different ways. One of them is we're going to be putting out a Bail Reform Year 2 report to look at how things were looking in 2021. We're also going to be hopefully looking at some of that recidivism data, the question that's everyone's mind. What happened to the individuals who were released under bail reform, who otherwise would have been detained? And were they committing new crimes or were they not? And so we're really going to be starting to dig into that data deeply in the next year.